Hello and welcome back to the channel, where once again it's time for another Sega Saturn review. With us today, taking a look at another pinball game within the Saturn's library in the form of True Pinball, a game that first saw release in Japan and the PAL regions in April of 1996 before coming out in October of the same year in North America. It was also released on the PlayStation, and what many people may not be aware of is the fact that it's actually an enhanced remake of the Amiga/DOS game Pinball Illusions, which came out in 1995, using the same tables, but it has some modifications to the visual presentation and the sound. Like always, I'll be talking about what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it plays like, content and lifespan, and ultimately whether it's still worth playing today and has the quality to make our PAL or worldwide Sega Saturn top 10s. Now, before we get on to start talking about anything at all to do with the game, I want you to take in what you're seeing on the screen. As soon as you turn the game on, you get a loading screen that says, please wait. You then get a loading screen with the Ocean logo. You then get a loading screen with the Digital Illusions logo. Then you get a loading screen with the True Pinball logo. And then you get another please wait loading screen before you finally get to the title screen where you press start. There is no introduction video. There is no demo mode playing. It is a very strange, surreal, and very sparse introduction to the game. Now, once you're on the main menu, you will see you've got a choice of scores, tables, options, and credits. Going into high scores, you can check what the targets are for you to try and beat if you want to get your name on the leaderboards, and then you can go into options where you can choose the camera view, which does actually affect the game somewhat. Choose the number of balls that you start with, and then you've got a few sound options and can also check the control pad configuration. So like always, I'm going to start with visuals first, and the first thing that I'm going to say is that I recommend you play this game with the 3D high-res viewpoint. This way, you've got pre-rendered tables that look quite detailed, they're bright, they're colourful, and they look more fitting with the era that the game came out in. If you pick the standard 3D view, it looks the same as this, it's just not as sharp or as crisp, and I don't really know why this was put in the game, in all fairness. Obviously, if you go for the two-dimensional viewpoint, it is a completely different experience, in my opinion. Now, the tables are bright and they're colourful, they're visually different, and they actually are all quite appealing, in all fairness. There is a little bit of scrolling, however, because the whole table doesn't fit on the screen. This is a minor niggle, and it might put some people off, but I don't think it's that bad, and you will get used to it. If you go for the two-dimensional viewpoint, it is much worse, and it is a lot harder to keep track of everything that's going on within the tables. The visual display at the top of the screen is suitable for a pinball game. It looks pretty good. I've got no issues with it. It's nicely positioned so it's out of the way and it never interferes with the play. Something that I said did occur a little bit when I spoke about digital pinball previously. One thing I can't really praise the game for, though, is presentation within the menus. I think it's pretty drab. I don't think it's pretty impressive at all. It actually looks quite low in terms of quality, and there are quite a lot of loading times within this game as well, which is a bit of a niggling feature. The tables don't really come to life until you start activating quite a few things as well, so I think they do have this slightly lifeless feel at various points. Once you do get things activated and things going, they do come to life, though, a little bit more. And overall, if you're playing the game from the 3D high-res viewpoint, I do think True Pinball is actually still an absolutely fine-looking pinball game. It stands the test of time pretty well, really, because it uses pre-rendered visuals, just like so many of the pinball games from the era. So moving on to the sound effects and music next, and you've got all of your typical sound effects that you would expect to find within a pinball game, and they all sound fine. The flippers, whenever you get high scores or you're activating things, the sound effects that follow it all sound spot on, and I've got no issues with those. The musical tracks for each of the four tables as well, they're pretty decent too, pretty decent to play to, pretty decent to listen to, and they suit the themes of the tables absolutely fine. The title theme for the game as well is a pretty snappy tune as well. My only slight criticism really is the fact that although the music does change when you're on the tables, when you activate events, I don't think it happens as often as you would like, and that means you're not quite feeling the excitement as much as you would like in a pinball game. Now this perhaps is more of a flaw in terms of the way the game's set up and the fact that it's not perhaps as easy as other pinball games to activate the events, meaning you don't get the change of music as frequently as something like digital pinball. But as well as that, there isn't quite as much music in this game overall as that game either. So whilst everything here I do think sounds absolutely fine, I just don't think it quite gives you the atmosphere and the rush of excitement in terms of the music and the constant changing of music as other pinball games do. But what I will do though, as always, is give you some samples of the music from the game. So moving on to the gameplay next, and True Pinball controls very similar to most other pinball games from the era. The D-pad and the action buttons control the flippers and the tilt mechanics of the table, and in this regard it plays absolutely fine. Where there are a few issues in my opinion come from the fact that obviously the table has to scroll up and down a bit even if you're going for the three-dimensional view, because the whole table doesn't fit on the screen. If you decide to go for the two-dimensional look, it has to scroll even more, and the game genuinely plays worse in my opinion playing it from this viewpoint. I definitely don't get much enjoyment if I'm playing True Pinball with the flat two-dimensional look. Another aspect that some people may notice, certainly I did at least anyway, is that the physics of the balls don't quite seem right. They actually seem too heavy, like they're being pulled down the screen slightly, and sometimes you'll fire them at ramps and they won't make it, and you'll just feel that there's some kind of little minor force dragging them down the table a bit. Certainly I noticed it at least anyway. Maybe other people won't, but for me, coming straight from playing digital pinball Last Gladiators before this was something I definitely noticed in this game. So whilst it plays okay in general, I don't actually think it's probably the best playing pinball game from the era. So moving on to content and lifespan next, and we've got 4 tables, and you simply pick one and try and get your best score, and that is it. There is no one player mode or anything really like that, just like most of the other pinball games from this era. Now in terms of its lifespan, it's pretty much dictated by if you've got anybody to play it with. Whilst I don't think it's the best playing pinball game around, if you had 6, 7 or 8 people to do the multiplayer with, then I think this would still give you a relatively decent level of enjoyment. I did actually play it multiplayer when I was a child, when I had it on the PlayStation, and it was actually a pretty fun time. If you're playing it purely from a one-player perspective, I don't think this game's going to bring you much enjoyment whatsoever. So like always, that leaves me with my final questions. Is True Pinball good enough to get into our PAL or worldwide Saturn top 10s, or is it so bad and truly dreadful that it features in the bottom 10? Well, I'll tell you straight away, this game does not have the quality to rival the likes of Dragon Force and the Shining Force games whatsoever, so it certainly does not feature in our top 10s. Is it so bad it features in the bottom 10? No, because it's by no means a terrible game. Games like Courier Crisis and Hardcore 4x4 will probably be holding on to their positions in my Saturn bottom 10 for a very, very long time. But of course, these are just my thoughts and my thoughts alone. Now, I have been told Digital Pinball Necronomicon is the best pinball game on the system, and I will be looking at that in the near future. But of course, what I want to know is your opinions of True Pinball. How well do you think it performed when it was compared against all the other pinball games from the era, or do you think, like me, it pretty much just got lost in the shuffle? Let me know your thoughts down below, and like always, I'll be back in the near future with another video. Goodbye for now.